Welcome to No Clip, the podcast that's like a book club for people who don't think that books reward them enough for being good at them. I'm Chad Rutherman.
And I'm Andy Kinney.
And today, we're going to be talking about Who's Lila, a game that was developed by Garage Heathen, published by Garage Heathen and IndieArc, and released in 2022 on Windows.
But first, if you can give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
That's the genre of this game.
It's Mario 64 meets Twin Peaks.
Yeah, that's how I would describe it. 100%. The meets Twin Peaks, definitely.
I was just talking about the menu where you can move his face around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I forgot about that. Not that part of the game, but that you could do that in Mario 64. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. So Who's Lila is like an adventure game in the sense that you kind of like walk around, talk to people, and gather sometimes inventory items, other times just like information. It is also a like collect the endings game. Mm-hmm. There is an ultimate like true ending after you do all of them. But you are essentially just sort of Groundhog Daying it through by following the life of this guy on a particular day and determining what it is that you're going to do to learn more. And as alluded to, it has this mechanic in which whenever you're in conversations with people, you have to make your character's face into one of 6 expressions by individually grabbing and moving their like the corners of their mouth and their jaw and their eyes,
eyebrows,
and arranging them,
eyebrows,
all the stuff, nostrils. Okay, I'm done listing facial features,
etc.
etc. And I want to say up front that like. In the end, I don't think that I, like, fucking loved this game, but I do think it is, like, very cool and super worth playing. So I would advise you that if that description sounds at all interesting, the game's, like, pretty cheap, and I do recommend, like, just going and checking it out before listening to this podcast.
Agreed.
Just wanted to throw that one in.
Yeah. So one thing that happens at the very beginning of the game, you don't have a start or well, you do have a load button, but you don't click start on the menu. You click wake up because you can see your character's face on the menu. His eyes open. It starts, and he explains this routine that he does. He's like, I always go into the bathroom and practice my facial expressions, because I have to move my muscles one by one, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know if it was just a me thing, but like I kept that up throughout like probably 10 plus runs. Like every time I would go to the bathroom and practice the facial expressions. And I don't really know why.
Well, I think I could be wrong here.
Yeah.
I think you have to do it every time that you
don't.
start a run.
Nope.
Oh.
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah, I eventually tried skipping it because, like, I always would do everything he said to do. I would like go into the bathroom, I would do the facial expressions, I'd get the trash, I'd talk to the lady at the front desk, I'd throw out the trash, and I did that every single time for like 10 loops or something. I was like, do I have to do any of this? And you don't.
Well, you have to get the trash and throw that out because it will stop you at the door.
Oh,
if
okay.
you don't.
I guess I never
tried. I did try to skip that.
Okay, yeah.
You have to answer the phone as well, I believe.
Yeah. If you try to just walk through the door to the kitchen, the phone.
So I think that is probably why I thought you also had to do. I might have skipped it and just like not even thought about it, but there are also endings that your choice of facial expression on 2 of the prompts in the tutorial sequence affects like how people react to you as well. So there's a couple of things that like that can affect, but yeah, it's interesting because it's like everything in this game is this sort of like cascading madness that builds on top of each other as the game goes on. And that just like, and it kicks it off. It's such a good, I should mention, this is like a student game, if I remember correctly. It was made by like a small team of people who, I believe this was their first, like, you know, sold game, marketable game.
Their freshman effort.
It's like their freshman effort, even though they're probably like seniors.
Right.
But it's such a concise, good way of like establishing the premise that I was like, I'm surprised because I've played so many games with enormously bloated intros. Even these short games often will have like a drawn out tutorial segment. And I think a part of it, like this game obviously can get away with that because it doesn't have, because the actual length of like the content is short. You'll have a lot of times through to actually practice and get better at it. But also the fact that it's just like, he starts out, he's like, I feel jealous about other people because they can just make facial expressions and I have to consciously think about it. Like, it establishes like the thing that is the defining trait of our main character and then lets you do it and play with it a bit before sending you out.
Yeah. No, it is really smart, and it like, I think it very successfully like puts you in the character's shoes. Like, there's something about like the directly like controlling his face, you know, like, I don't know, there's something almost like intimate about it.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those things where, like, if you were to strip this down into a more traditional adventure game interface, you could still do the same mechanic, but just have the player choose between one of 6 expressions to make. And because you have to interact with it in this unique way, I think it imbues it with like a certain tone and, like you said, sort of an intimacy with your character, which gets more necessary, I think, the more you learn about like the actual circumstances in the narrative. So yeah, I would agree with that.
So like, one of the first things that you're supposed to do is, at least the task you get the first time you throw out the trash, is go to the school. And in the school, like, there's a character who's like wandering around in like the front hall area that clues you in to the fact that like you have to walk in and out of the classrooms to like get to where you're trying to go. I just missed her. I think it was a mistake to make her a character that's walking around and not one that's stationary, because I did not find her till probably like my 6th run through. So I just didn't do that one, and I instead went down to the boiler room, and that was the first ending I got, was the boiler room one.
Do you remember if it was death or if it was the wheel?
The wheel.
The wheel, yeah. Yeah, same. Okay. Except I did talk to the girl about going in and out of classrooms and stuff, but I still did the boiler room thing first, and then I went back into the boiler room thing again. So I did end up doing both of those like in a row before I ever got to the school. And I was actually going to ask you about that as well, because the person on the phone tells you to do something.
Yeah, meet him at the docks or whatever.
Yeah, but that is like different than what your character says. And I think they're both in your journal, but let's be honest, who's checking the journal? So I was curious as if you would have been more likely to follow the instructions given over the phone or from the player character. But I think it is also sort of like, I didn't know when I started this game. I didn't know anything about it aside from the fact that you controlled it with, you control your character's face. That was the thing that sold me on it originally. But I didn't know that it was like a multiple endings kind of game. So I went to the school just assuming like I would get the chance to go to the docks after school or something. And then the game abruptly ended when somebody handed me a wheel. which made no sense, and I had to like recalibrate my expectations for everything. So after that, I ended up not going to the docks for like many times through. Yeah. After that, because I was like, I gotta exhaust all the school stuff first.
Yeah, like, because for me, it was kind of the opposite, where I did the wheel ending first, and then as soon as I woke up, and it was like the same day over again, I'm like, oh shit. Well, I got to do something different this time. So I immediately went to the docks on the second one. And then it felt like the school was supposed to be, at least this was my perception based on the way I played it. It felt like the school was supposed to be the main thread like that. But instead, I feel like I stumbled onto or latched onto the wrong things. Because like I went to the docks, and then after that, I got the information about the burned down apartment building, so I went there, and then tried to go like back to the docks because I was trying to figure out the phone number or the password to the computer. So it was like a while before I went back to the school, and then when I finally made it up to the roof, I'm like, oh, like this feels like it was really important, and it was just like completely swept under the rug for me.
Yeah, I think because I did most of that stuff first, and it's interesting because I think you can sort of like mechanically separate those two parts of the game also. Like the school part of the game is the one that uses the most. My theory that I don't have any proof of is that they did this part first, and then as the project expanded, started to include that other stuff that we'll get into. But yeah, that first part, you use the facial mechanics a lot. Like you're talking to people, you're making expressions, the expressions that you choose sort of lead you down different paths, and if you make it to the police station, it's like a final boss of being able to navigate, like intuit what expressions you should be making and how to do them. And then once you start going off into the other parts of the city, it like there's very few conversations that you have, and the game starts taking turns into stranger, weird places that don't that aren't the sold to you weird place that you knew that the game was going to go to.
Yeah, that feels like it makes sense to me. It almost feels like it makes sense, right? To like on the whiteboard when you're mapping out the game, that you'd be like, okay, you go to the school, you go through this narrative, and then like once you've done all that, you kind of like see beyond the veil. And then like and then it becomes about getting all the endings and like finding the cards and figuring out what really is going on. Like that would seem to make sense as a structure for this game.
Yeah, and it seems like, and I mean that's the thing. I found myself basically in having the two halves of the game, the two wolves inside me, and really liking both of them, but like wishing that the game wasn't the way that it was. Because like I really liked the different elements that they went, and once again, student game scale very intentionally small. This is not supposed to be a sprawling thing,
right?
But I was like, I wish that more of this was sort of like all part of the same continuous storyline rather than being this collect the endings game.
Yeah, less vignette-y.
Yeah, because there was a lot going on, and like it is part of the same storyline in this sort of like meta narrative sense, where at any time from the save menu after you get one of a few endings, you can just like go to a guy and talk about like what you've seen and what it means in the meta narrative. But it like, to me, it was like, I didn't want to redo the same stuff to like try different things to push the endings. Like I appreciate that. And I appreciate the way that it like ties into the narrative of, these characters, but also at the same time, it's like, I would like to be taken on a little bit more of a ride than having to continually get off and get on, you know?
Yeah, no, I feel the same, and I think we talked about similar stuff with I know Midnight Manor and possibly Fatum Vacula, which are
Right.
also collect the endings games. Like it isn't the most fun, like once you've experienced like the bulk of the game, to just go back and redo stuff.
Mm.
It's just to try one different thing, like
Yeah.
especially like with this, like it can be kind of difficult to manipulate his face when it's making like expressions on its own. So like you don't want to spend 5 minutes getting to a conversation and then fuck it up and then have to start it over. It's not the
Yeah.
most fun.
Well, there is also an easy mode you can activate.
Oh yeah, I forgot that it said that.
Yeah, I didn't do it because of toxic masculinity, I presume. Uh I didn't want to be the guy who turned easy mode on.
Of course.
And so I didn't do it. But if I had, there are other circumstances that meant that I didn't get all of the endings that I'll explain at some point. But if it had gotten to the point where I was restarting the whole loop to go back to the police station to have the conversation again in order to get those endings, I would have 100% turned it on without hesitation, because I do not want to like go through all that stuff again, and that's why I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
And that's just, I think that's just sort of like, I don't know if collect the endings are like anyone's favorite genre of game, but like I see it as kind of a stopgap. The thing that's interesting in a game like this, or like in Fatum Vacula or Midnight Manor, is a lot like the discovery, finding new stuff. I think is what's cool.
The Stanley Parable.
The Stanley
Would be the
Parable,
most
exactly.
famous one, probably.
And this doesn't like it. It's difficult to create those senses of discovery, of new and interesting things if you have to like hold everything that happened as canon. And so, yeah, I feel like this is a way to get a little wild with it.
Yeah.
And not have to worry as much about sort of your story or making things make sense or covering for plot holes and shit. Like,
Yeah.
that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, and it does seem kind of like the genre matters a lot, because I feel like it works the best in the Stanley Parable and Fatum Vacula because they're exploration based. Whereas, yeah, like with a platformer and a point-and-click adventure game, it feels a little bit clunkier.
Yeah. Especially having to go through conversations again and be like, what did I say each time? And in this game, of course, I mean, what did I face this time?
Right. Did I face my fears this time?
Yeah, did I face my fears? I don't remember the other words to that song from Kingdom Hearts 3.
Right.
So yeah, let's break things down, and I want to start with the thing that people are more likely to be familiar with this game, and that is the facial manipulation mechanics. You describe them as being, and I'm sure a lot of people describe them as being like the Super Mario 64 loading screen face, main menu face, which is accurate. I'm not saying it's a bad comparison, but I wonder did you take to them quickly? Was there any frustration with the system at all, like when you were playing, or?
I don't know if I would call it frustration, because I feel like it's supposed to be challenging. But I feel like I took to it like medium, like probably like the average person does. Like I found it difficult to make the scared expression. I think I failed to do like the first 3 times I tried it. I eventually figured it out, but everything else felt simple enough. I was never sure what facial expression to make when he says, well, what if I run into my worst enemy or whatever he says? I was like, I don't know, a neutral face?
Could do a
Like,
neutral
I don't
face,
know.
yeah.
Like, what face would you make for that? That's such a specific thing.
Yeah, I found that it fell into this, and honestly, this is such a praise, and should be taken as praise. That it fell into the pitfall that like every adventure game like this does, and that is I would do something based on my own interpretation of like what would be a normal reaction to something, and then the game would tell me that the other person thought that I was being a fucking lizard person.
Right.
And this happens all the time with things that are just like literal dialogue options. But the fact that this game doesn't even have that kind of a choice, and it is in fact behind a slightly skill testing gesture system, that's incredible that they managed to even find that hole to fall into.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, like I found like the actual, I agree, the scared face was harder to nail than the other ones. The simple ones of like angry, smiling, and neutral are like single motions and you're there. But scared and disgusted were both a little bit more difficult to get to.
Yeah, for me, I felt like scared was just like you just move the eyelids up. And
and it'll just do it from that.
Yeah.
I think I always went to the mouth first, and that was my problem.
I think
you could go to surprised or disgusted with the eyes up also.
Yeah, I was an eyebrows first approach.
It's a top-down approach versus a bottom-up approach.
Which worked well for everything except scared, at least for me. Like, it was like the mouth shape that made scared, was how I figured out how to make it work.
That one's also, it's very difficult to do scared during the parts where the face is acting on its own.
Yeah, it's really fucking hard.
Yeah, it is a lip curl away from disgusted every fucking time. So yeah, that was, and I mean, that's interesting. I like that it brought like a level of this, for such an abstract, like completely fucking off the wall mechanic like this, for it to bring like a level of its own like strategy and efficiency to it is, I wasn't expecting that at all. My guess was when I saw the game was going to be that you just always had unlimited time to do it, and that it wouldn't tell you what the expression was until you submitted it. Like that's how I imagined it would work. But the fact that it works like an actual like mini game is very funny. But also I don't think supports even this short of a game in terms of like mechanics, so I'm glad that they also did other stuff.
Yeah, I feel like it could have, like, it kind of feels like they don't like push it, I don't think, as far as like the concept could go. But yeah, I mean, I'd have to brainstorm to come up with some more ideas of what to do, but it felt like they could have wrung a little bit more juice out of it at least.
You're probably not incorrect, but yeah, I agree that this doesn't really seem like the episode to be like, this is how I would improve this, because it's such a weird game.
Yeah,
it's difficult to even say like what could have been done one way or the other. But yeah, I do want to. You go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, before we switch subjects, one thing you said was you'll make a facial expression that you think is like a reasonable way to respond to whatever they say, and then they'll be like, oh, it was like really weird that you did that or whatever. But there were times where like it would that's what the dialogue would say, but like you did the correct thing. Like, true. There was like, it's like early on that conversation, I think her name is Ellie. You need her to like tell you what Martha's classroom number is. Like, you have to, like, the second expression you have to make is a sad face, and when you do it, it's like, that was weird. But anyway, and then she just tells you, she's like, oh, you know, like, it ends up being the right thing to do. So, yeah, the messaging, maybe intentionally, maybe it's supposed to be a little obtuse, but That seems
That's
strange
true.
to me.
Well, I do also think, and I guess this is a good place to mention it. One of the other things that's like, and this is more narrative, but tied into sort of the way that the mechanics function. I love that in the context of the world that you're playing in, the fact that you are a serial killer, kind of, we'll get into that, and the fact that you have this, like, inability to move your face are not related. Like, it isn't a thing where your character is like an insane person. It's not like your character is a fucked up face thing because of whatever is causing, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's a thing that is known about your character by other people who treat you as a peer. Like, it's just like a disability that you have that other people just understand. Which is, I think, is weird. Like, it's extremely strange coming from a game like this, and I think exposes sort of how often, like, disability and age and just, like, physical ugliness are often tied to evil in, like, horror so often. For that to be just sort of like a part of your character who, like, at the end of the game is revealed to not actually be like an evil killer. You're, like, possessed in a sense. Yeah, I just thought that was cool and interesting as a way of, like, this is just a thing. That's why you're doing this as part of the mechanic set.
Yeah, it was one of those things about the game that felt Twin Peaksy to me. Like, that just feels like a thing that would be like a thing, a quirk of a character in Twin Peaks.
Fully.
Like, they just have to, like, manually make facial expressions.
Yeah, and talk about wearing your influences on your sleeve. The fact that there's just a Blue Velvet poster in the game that that your character comments on and says is cool.
Yeah, the only cool thing in the room. Yeah, but, like, and also there's, like, the whole concept of tulpas.
Oh, yeah.
I thought was just a thing wholly made up for Twin Peaks, and I didn't know it was, like, a pre-existing concept.
I don't remember where this was, but I had seen something that referenced tulpas outside of Twin Peaks Season 3. And had this exact moment where I was like, I assumed that David Lynch made that up, and the fact that it isn't the case is absolutely mind-boggling. Yeah, insanity. But also, like, I don't know if this is the kind of, I just assumed that this person whoever wrote this just took a lot of inspiration from Lynch in the way that a lot of these things were done, and honestly done in such a good way. Let's just go talk about, like, the narrative, I think.
You're gonna have to do the heavy lifting here.
That's not good because I didn't get the actual ending and did not.
I only
it.
got 6 of them.
Okay, I don't know where I landed. I think it was like 12 or something. I act like I'm gonna check, but I don't actually know. I have 16 achievements, and 3 of them are not tarot cards. So 13. I got 13 endings.
Oh, you're now cursed because you stopped on an unlucky number?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, so the way that this game is set up is you get up. We already talked about this. You get up, you practice your facial expressions.
Grab a brush, put a little makeup.
You grab a brush, put a little makeup. You hide the scars and fade away the shakeup. And so you go, oh, I did want to bring this up. Did you ever open the diary?
Yeah.
They played me like a fucking fiddle. Because I was literally looking at the diary before I was about to quit playing the game and was like, I can't believe I never found the code for this, and then quit the game and, like, on my screen the like who's Lila thing and the code being written on like the store page is insane. But I loved that. I love that I figured it out naturally without having to resort to a guide, which I did for like several of the other endings. And it honestly was such an incredible moment. And I just like opened the game back up immediately and put in the code.
Yeah,
I don't know if you had a similar thing.
No, I noticed the code the first time I launched the game. I was like, I immediately my not indie game poisoned mind, but my podcast poisoned mind was like, oh, look at this Kojima bullshit. That's gonna be like a code for a thing in the game, and then kind of just dismissed that thought and didn't try it for a while. But then I was like, oh yeah, I should remember what that code is and put it in. And I almost like didn't like. I was like almost in a little bit of disbelief when it worked.
At the point where I saw it, it was definitely like the only thing that it would have made sense for it to be. But also, I think it's your designer poisoned mind is what it is.
Yeah.
You saw the number on the banner and thought, what a weird thing to put on the banner. That's probably important. And I just fucking ignored it.
Yeah, this is a thing that I find really interesting, and this isn't really the place to talk about it. So I'll be brief, but like that's something it's weird to keep like noticing about people in my life, because like I remember like Dan, shout out Dan, I know you're listening, mentioned to me like one time he was like, "Did you notice that the C in the Chick-fil-A logo is a chicken?" And I was like, "Yes, it's a giant chicken." He's like, "I never noticed it," and I'm like, "How?" Like, it's the whole thing. How do you look at it and not notice?
Right.
And apparently he's not alone in that. Apparently people just look at it and see the letter C and don't notice that it has a bunch of other crap on it. So yeah, I realized that I just like notice the things that I'm looking at more actively than other people, which is like a weird thing to think about. In D&D terms, I have a high passive perception.
Yeah, you have a high passive perception, especially when it comes to logos and like other signage.
Banners.
Yeah, banners, things like that. Because I probably clocked it in like a subconscious way and then sort of put it out of my mind when I was playing and didn't get it until like I closed the game and it was right in front of me. Which feels like almost like a psychological thing that I wasn't expecting. So that's cool. But anyway, so yeah, you go into a room. There's a diary that you can't open unless you notice the code, which gives you a little bit of information. Everything in the game gives you a little bit of information at a time. And then, yeah, you get a phone call. It's weird. It gives you an address. You throw out a trash bag, which later turns out to have a torso in it. And then you go to school and you learn essentially about your character, Will, met a girl named Tanya at a party and got along with them well enough that you end up hooking up with her despite the fact that she has a boyfriend, a guy named Mike.
Yeah, and also, like, random thing to call out, but, like, the missing, like, person posters, similarly, like, to Life is Strange, before Rachel Amber is ever, like, actually brought up in the story, you can see the posters around the school, or the flyers. And I feel like it's a weirdly good method of foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Like, even though it's, like, heavy-handed, you know, it's just, like, the information right there on the wall. Like, I think you feel like you discover it, so it makes it feel, like, more natural. For some reason, I don't know, that stood out as, like, it builds intrigue really well, I think. Yeah,
it's one of those things where it's, like, I feel like they were obviously we're taking influence from Twin Peaks, from Lynch, and the fact that there's an iconic... If you're familiar with Twin Peaks, first of all, go watch it. It's like the greatest television show ever made, except the second season. And then,
if you like this game, then you'll like Twin Peaks probably.
That's a very good point. Yeah, but famously Twin Peaks. First of all, there's an iconic image of
Laura Palmer.
Laura Palmer. I always said Sarah Palmer, which is her mom. There's an iconic image of Laura Palmer that's like her prom photo or something. She's wearing like
maybe Homecoming Queen or something.
That might have been what it was. Yeah, but she has like a tiara and like a dress on, and it's like this image that's constantly in the game. And I feel like the image that they use of Tanya slash Lila is a like a direct parallel to that. Like the posing is similar, the fact that it is like this sort of idealized image of a character,
right, and she's like a popular girl with a dark side
exactly. Yeah, and it mirrors sort of that. And there's a famous thing about Twin Peaks, which is that David Lynch didn't want to have the killer exposed. Like, he didn't want the mystery to ever be solved, and was forced to. And I feel like this game, narratively speaking, wanted to sort of capture that idea of what if the mystery is not solvable. Like, the answer to what happened to Tanya is sort of answered in the game. However, like, the fact that Tanya and Lila share an image, and that there's all of this idea of like life that has come from an idea and now walks around on its own and is powered by the like thoughts of other people, that is, to me, like, I think narratively what makes this game so interesting is that it takes a lot of different avenues specifically to make it so that none of them are as clear cut as you would think. It justifies the multiple endings. It increases like the level of intrigue for everything that you see. It's just a cool concept.
Yeah, and it almost feels like it feeds into the idea of like cosmic horror, where you can never really, it's like unknowable, and like that kind of satisfaction of something that you'll never know. Like, if that makes any sense. Like, something that, like, you don't want it to end, you know, but, like, you always want to kind of, like, hang on to the idea of the thing. It's comparable to that, I guess. There's always another mystery.
Yeah.
So you'll keep thinking about it.
Yeah, it lets it stay in your mind, and also it almost gives, like, the same feeling of having solved a mystery by knowing that the solution to the mystery is sort of out of your grasp.
By knowing that you can't know.
Yeah, but at the same time, I didn't actually really get that feeling because I wasn't actually able to finish the game. Which I'll jump into that real quick. There's an ending you can get. I know it's the Hierophant ending, but I don't remember what you do to get to it. Who knows? It's one of the ones that takes a long time. I think it is the one with the computer. And when you talk to you about it, Detective You, not you, though that was a bit on the nose. Detective You is absolutely supposed to represent sort of like the player interrogating the narrative of the story.
Yeah, I think that's clever, because at least I didn't get it right away.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I definitely didn't jump on it instantaneously, but, like, it's pretty quick once you start talking to him.
Yeah. I don't know. I liked that. I thought that was cheeky in just the right way.
Fair enough. But at the end of his description on that one, because, it is the computer one. I want to talk about this as a separate thing, but there's an ending that requires you to jump through a bunch of hoops, and part of that is like reading this person's description of how to destroy Lila, who at this point in the game is essentially just like a full-on character that you have many ways of interacting with, and at the end of it, the Detective You, a character who only exists within a save file in the game, shoots you. And in my case, kills Will. So Lila is now in full control. And from what I could tell, But when you go to do the other endings, when the cops are talking to you, you cannot respond as Will anymore. You only respond as Lila. And I don't think you can get the other endings in this scenario. So I just kind of gave up when like the dialogue had entirely changed.
Right.
And so I could no longer complete it. So there actually could be more of a concrete answer to a lot of the stuff in the game that I'm aware of, but as far as I can tell, there really isn't.
Yeah, like I got the 6 endings I got, and that was about the point where it started to feel like tedious to get more. I was like, well, I don't know what to do now. I probably have to just do the same paths again, but then try a different thing. And I went up to the roof, and did the confrontation with Mike. Is that his name? Yeah. And the first time I did that, just aced it, got the conversation to the point where he threw me off the roof. And then I tried it 3 times and couldn't get it. And I was like, well, fuck this. 6 endings is enough.
Fair enough. I like liberally used my save games, which I think yeah could it does help a lot. Like I had saves from after being killed by Mike. I had saves before talking to Martha on the roof, and say in like multiple different states. Like I had a whole list of save games, which is so it was always very easy for me to go back and try things over and over again, which I think probably is why I had the patience to actually try for more endings.
Yeah.
There are a few that I went to a guide to figure out. One, I didn't know that there was an option to get to I didn't know that I was in a save game that had the wheel from the Wheel of Fortune ending, and there are actually 3 endings in the afterlife, and I had only gotten 2 of them, and I learned about the 3rd one, because if you go without having it, then you can take the projector off, and it's a slightly different boat ride ending. Stuff like that would come up, where it's like, I didn't even remotely consider this, so I'm on your side there. I would not have tried too hard to do those over and over again. I think I actually only had like the conversation with Mike like 3 times,
Right.
Because I just kept saving in different spaces. So.
Yeah. That's smart. That's one of those things that like I now feel dumb because I never even thought to do that.
You didn't grow up with old PC games.
I guess. Yeah, I have played RPGs though, and I guess that's a thing I've never done in RPGs. Like, there's like an RPG YouTube channel that I watch sometimes, and like he was talking about like a Final Fantasy game, and he had like capture footage, and he like goes like to the save menu. He's got like 20 of them. You know, like from all different points in the game. Like, if I ever want to go back and replay a section, I have the save. And I'm like, that's galaxy brain to me. Like, I never, ever, 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 ever would have thought to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always just use the auto saves because it always auto saves before the start of a conversation. So that's I would just always go back to the start of the convo.
That makes sense. Yeah, I am thinking of like old adventure games where you would just like you could just lose the game,
like Kingsfield,
or like soft lock yourself, so you just save before you try stuff.
Right.
And so like at the beginning it didn't matter, right? Like because I didn't know that it was a multiple endings game, but I had started the game and played for 5 minutes and then had to get off to record a stupid podcast with this idiot. And so I saved. I had a save game that was just called "You Look Scared." I was very into the like, let's name it like old adventure game save files, and that quickly dropped off. And it was very utilitarian from that point on. And then I had another one that was before going into the classroom because I was like, fucking what, like the conversation I had was so weird, and it turns out to be the only way you can get the information you need, that I was like, I'm just gonna reload and try it again. So it was weird like going back, and so I ended up having those 2 save files and then many others came afterward. But I had started strong with it, so I kept being able to drop back. But I want to talk about the other half of the game, kind of. The part of the game that involves the DLC, which I'll put in giant quotations, and leaving the game entirely.
Okay. I noticed that it said there was DLC available, but I did not check it out.
Okay. So this is so fucking cool. If you take anything away from my conversation about this game, like my half of the conversation, it is that the way that they did this with the game to include this part is one of the coolest fucking things I've ever seen for no good reason. Just it appeals to me on like an aesthetic level. So there's the burned out building that you went to, and it had like the phone and shit. I forget where exactly it tells you this. There's a bit of dialogue or a document. Maybe it's like the unlocked document on the computer. I'm not 100% sure. Mentions they call it like it has been uploaded. It's like a real cheesy way to make your brain think downloadable content. But it's not like you have to like go to the store page and go download it and like do it yourself. Like you have to actually make the effort to go find it because it's not bundled with the game, and I don't think it's just on the store page. But it is called Damon.
It mentions it on like when you are in Steam. I think there's like a button. It's like DLC available, like on the page, like
right?
When you click on the game. But anyway,
yeah. However, it is in Steam itself. Like there is like a DLC package thing that you can download, and then once you download that and restart the game, the main menu will have a icon that says summon to desktop, which summons a desktop shortcut to a program that links into the game but runs in a separate window that is just like a terrifying demon face that sits outside the game, and whenever you do stuff in the game that it can help with, it will make this like noise and then speak with like a text-to-speech thing.
Okay.
Like it tells you the phone number to that phone to call, and the phone number is like is like
so
35
I do remember reading about that.
Long.
Who does someone tell? I think it's one of the endings. Like a character tells you that. Because I remember them saying like because I remember that like what you're talking about. They say something about a demon in the number. But yeah, I can't quite remember either.
Yeah, it's it like just spawns stuff or like takes you into different places depending on where you are and like what it's telling you to interact with. But it like solves a few puzzles and just like completely opens new areas in some cases. But yeah, if you call the number, and the number's like 30 numbers long for no reason, you call somebody who is dead. It's the guy at the beginning. They're like Father whoever is dead, Father Matthews or something. And you call his ghost, and he tells you how to get into the file on the computer, which requires you to then go to a different website and then follow a link to the itch page for the game, which has a PDF that you can read, and then that has a link that goes somewhere else, and that gives you the password to the file. And it's all really interesting. It's well written. I read the PDF on the website. I did not read the full Wikipedia articles that were linked because I didn't have that kind of time. But it was all very interesting in terms of like what it made me do. I took like a screenshot at one point because my monitor was just full of other things that weren't the game, which is pretty fun. Yeah, I thought it was real cool. I liked it a lot.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds pretty sweet. Those 3D sections were cool.
Oh yeah,
Like the first person sections. I think I don't remember. I think it's the one that you like meditate into, via like the room with the computer.
yeah,
Like when you first like wake up there, you just see a close up of the face,
yep.
and it just looks like a flat image, so you don't realize that you're now in first person yet. I thought that was like a cool effect.
Yeah, it's one of those things for the perspective of it because it sits on the right side of the screen and like the action in the game takes place on the left side and the right side is just the main character's face, or the face of whoever is talking. And so when you get to the like riverbank part and it's just like a close up on Lila's face and then you go to you're like what's happening and you move the mouse and it makes your perspective shift and you realize that you're in a first person part. Fucking great. I also loved it. Super dope.
Hell yeah.
I wish I had more interpretive things to say about the game. But I did want to mention that I don't get the boat endings because they all seem to end exactly the same way. You go down the river and then you go under some live electrical wires, calling back, in my opinion, to the Frost Lynch logo that is at the end of the episodes of Twin Peaks. And then it fades to white and you get an ending. But I don't really understand it. And I don't understand the projector reels. They're kind of a consistent thing because they show up in the tower ending also.
Right. So, like, the thing that I was thinking about with that, and you experienced more of the story than I did, so maybe you can tell me if this is completely off base.
Okay.
But, like, essentially, like, is Will, like, not a real person? Is he, like, a kind of... Is he a Tulpa? Like, is he, like, kind of, like, in a human clay body or something? Like, that's why his face has to be moved around? Because like I thought, like my interpretation was like the real is like whose personality is actually inhabiting the body. Because like you can switch it for the other face,
right?
So it felt like representative of like who is possessing the body that you're playing.
I think that is right because the tower ending, which I presume you couldn't have gotten because it's a demon ending. In the tower ending, you go and find Lila's reel and throw it in a bottomless pit, just like to get rid of it. And if you talk to you, he says like, he's like, but what about the reel or whatever? And she's like, I don't need the reel. That's more for people, flesh people, real people or something. I don't remember exactly what the dialogue is. So that could be it. It's like if you change the real to Will versus if you change the wheel to no one, which is also a possibility. And then sail into the afterlife. But that's the part I don't understand is like what it accomplishes in the end.
Maybe it like kills the Tulpa body or something.
Could be.
When you go under the electricity, I don't know. That works with like the reliving the same day every day thing.
Okay, maybe. Yeah, you're going outside of the Groundhog's Day.
Yeah, I don't know.
I will say there's an ending where Lila describes herself as being Will's Tulpa as opposed to the other way around. Like, I think that Tanya is the Tulpa. And Lila is the entity, and then Will is the son. Lila is the father, and Tanya is the Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit.
I don't know if that works out metaphorically the way that I was hoping.
Maybe. Like I kind of thought that like Tanya and Will were both Tulpas, and that's why they connected with each other. Maybe like Lila, like maybe she like electricity, maybe like jumped between the two of them.
Okay. Well, we know that Lila has also spoken to Strepnov, the
Of course,
Russian.
Stretnov.
I don't know if that was his actual name. The
It was
Russian
something
guy,
like that.
yeah, who chases you around with a flashlight and then you feed to a
Yeah.
giant insect in a closet.
Yeah, that riveting stealth section.
Yeah. So beats me on as far as like how exactly that works. But I think that Lila is definitely well, I mean, the documents that you read to get the fucking code for the computer that tells you how to destroy Lila describes her as being there's an acronym that I'm not going to remember, but it's basically like a very influential image. But it like gains like when the idea is like when somebody has a meme and that meme becomes really popular, then it can like become sentient and start enacting its own will, using the symbol as sort of like a point of channeling. And that is what Lila is. She was essentially created in a lab as an image, which does give, I think, credence to the Tanya is the Tulpa. Also, Tulpa, Tanya,
Right.
starts T, ends with A, 5 letters long. Compelling. I'm compelled. But yeah, maybe she is the created in a lab part.
Contains all the letters in Lila. Just get your tinfoil
Plus a
hat
couple
out.
extras. Yeah.
Strepnov is an anagram for.
But yeah, I think we're not here necessarily to solve the mystery, but I think that's really descriptive of how engaging the mystery itself is. That there's a lot sort of going on and a lot of information that you can sort of glean from all the different parts of it. Do we have... Mark
you read
Frost
my mind?
thoughts? No.
If you don't say facial.
Yeah, it does seem like the right thing to do, huh?
Yeah.
Do we have facial thoughts?
My facial thoughts. This game is really cool and unique. It also uses like a 1-bit like kind of art style. We didn't mention that. Which
Before
also
you
adds
go
to
on-
the surrealism.
Yeah, before you do the final thoughts, can we talk for a second about the art style? Because we should have mentioned it. God damn
Do
it.
like a
It was,
record skip.
yeah, it was really hard to see at times.
Oh, you think so?
I found that it was difficult for me to differentiate what stuff was while looking at it. But that being said, it makes little difference the further you go into the game because you're seeing the same things over and over again. But man, my first playthrough, I was like, this is tough. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. It alleviates itself very quickly, but I found the art style was compelling, but also kind of annoying for like an hour.
Yeah.
Anyway, go.
There are some scenes that are like washed out, and I that does seem like intentional for some reason to make things kind of hard to tell what they are. But for the most part, I felt like it remained like high contrast and pretty easy to tell what stuff was. But anyway, so my facial thought. So yeah, this game is really unique and interesting with the cool 1-bit art style. It sucked me in right away. It's very intriguing right off the bat with the mysterious phone call, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I think I just don't particularly love find the ending games because I really liked my first several run throughs where I like had stuff to do and things to find. That part rocked. And then I ran out of things and had to start repeating content, and then my interest kind of jumped off a cliff. But yeah, like it's this is like a small game, student game apparently. I was unaware of that. So yeah, I had, it's not like I had super high expectations. So I was still very pleased with the game. How long to beat, once again, proving to be filthy liars. I played this for 4 hours and only got 6 endings. I don't think anyone's beaten this in 2.5 hours.
Yeah, you'd
But
think that it would be like 20 minutes for
right.
like beat the game and then 6 hours or something for plus extras.
Yeah, I think it's only like 3.5 for main plus extras is what it says, but everyone's a lie. Yeah, I think this is the kind of game that, like, I don't know if everybody would like as like a game to play hanging out with their friends, but like I think like the ideal scenario for this game and me would be if we just booted this up while we were hanging out, played it for like 2.5 hours, and then just shut it off. You know, like I think if you, for at least for someone like me, if you try to go for all the endings, it's just kind of end up leaving a bad taste in your mouth. So, I would, yeah, I don't know. For me, I think it would have enhanced it if I would have like gotten out while the getting was still good. But yeah, so I'll end it at that. Super interesting and cool, and still enjoyed it despite the shortcomings.
Yeah, I just agree with like almost all of that, I would say. The fact that this game tickled a lot of gaming erogenous zones on my in my brain. Specifically like extremely interesting mechanic that I had not seen done before, like the communication via facial expressions. It was just a cool thing to go and experience. I genuinely really liked the story it was telling. I liked all of the details and the mystery, even if a lot of it was sort of cribbed in ways from Lynch. And I mean, maybe even because of that, Lynch is a great writer. He does incredibly strange things that I enjoy. So I liked the stuff that was taken from Lynch also. And it did all of the weird meta indie game stuff that I'm always just going to enjoy because I crave that stuff. I don't know what it is about it. I just always love when a game does stuff like that. I loved the DLC implementation and everything like that. The fact that the DLC wasn't even really DLC. It was just a thing that they were able to hide away from the user until a certain point. Like, lots of cool shit there that I was a big fan of. So I did really love that. But yeah, you you bring it up. We brought it up at the very beginning. I just think that Find the Endings games are difficult to engage with in a way that is unfortunate, because I was compelled to get up to 13 of the endings, but that ain't all the endings. There's 16 of them. So I couldn't finish it for one reason or another. One of the reasons being that I apparently did something wrong in a conversation that I had with a character, and the other thing being I very much lost interest in going through the game multiple times. So yeah, and that's tough. Frankly, it's just hard to balance, I think. Like, how do you make a game that does the things that this game does without using these sort of contrivances of multiple endings? And it's a hard problem to solve, and it's a harder problem to solve when you're working with limited resources. So I certainly don't blame the team for how this game turned out in terms of like the parts of it that I found less compelling or less interesting, but it's very easy to praise them for some really strange ideas and really cool execution of that. So yeah, I do recommend this game, like I said at the beginning. So I think everyone should play it. Not really. Some people are not going to click with this. Thank you for listening to NoClip this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, I believe, adventure puzzle game from Simogo, a game company that we just have only played bangers by.
Yeah. They were the probably the all-stars of No Clip Pocket.
Absolutely. But we discontinued Pocket right in time for them to release a game that we couldn't have talked about on Pocket.
We're really growing along with them.
Exactly. They don't know it, but we're like brothers.
But closer.
But closer. But until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com or on splattershot.pro. There you can find links to our email address, the Twitter account, the YouTube channel, the Discord, where you can suggest games for us to play or talk about the games that we have already played, which, of course, include games such as Fatum Bachelor,
Super Mario 64.
Accurate, yeah. WarioWare is a game that you could see this facial expression thing being a game inside of.
Yeah.
Some other weird. What's that one? Starts with a T. Tamashi. Yeah, that one's also pretty odd. You could other student games like Pseudo Regalia.
What's it called? Hypnospace Outlaw.
Oh yeah,
for some reason that feels like a spiritual kin.
Those are kin for sure. Yeah,
a weird PC game.
Look disgusted at that like button because you haven't clicked it yet.
Replay conversations over and over again in the comment section. And get up onto the school roof so you can ring that bell.
Nice. I was going to say ring the dinner bell for the crows when you throw that torso in the dumpster.
Yeah. That also works.
It's a lot worse.
Clunky.
A game that was developed by George Heathen, published by... Sorry, I just read it as a name. It's Garage. The word is garage. Let me try that again.